These three lenses here are 24 millimeters, 35 millimeters, and 50 millimeters. This one lens here is a 24 to 70 millimeter zoom lens. Now this one lens covers the focal length of all three of these lenses here. But when I go out shooting, this zoom lens is going to stay home on the shelf, and these three lenses are going to have a place in my bag. Why is that? Well, that's what this video is about. This one's going to be a little bit more personal, a little bit more about my own shooting styles and preferences. But I'm going to tell you why I shoot mostly prime lenses. I'm going to weigh some of the pros and cons of shooting primes versus shooting zooms. I'll show you the kind of bag that I use. I'll show you how I change lenses on the fly. And if nothing else, you'll get a little bit more of an insight into how I work and what makes me tick as a photographer. So if you're ready, let's get started. So what exactly is a prime lens? Well, unlike a zoom lens, where you can change focal lengths, this one, for example, is a 24 to 70 millimeter zoom lens. Goes from 24 millimeters, you rotate it, it zooms into 70 millimeters. You can use any focal length in between. A prime lens is fixed at one focal length. So this, for example, is a 50 millimeter lens. You put it on your camera, you're shooting at 50 millimeters. You can't rotate it, you can't zoom it. If you want to shoot wide angle, you have to change your lens. So why would I do that? Why would I want to be shooting prime lenses and changing them all the time rather than just using the zoom? Well, a lot of it's personal preference, but I've always found that I could be much more creative when using prime lenses. See, most photography is done within kind of a narrow focal length and aperture range. Most people are going to use the zoom lenses that come with their camera, which basically covers 24 to 70 or 24 to 100 millimeters, maximum aperture of 4.0 or 5.6. If they get a quality zoom, maximum aperture might be 2.8, but really still most photographs are taken within that range, 24 to 100, 2.8, 4.0, right around there. So if I'm shooting within that range, if I'm shooting 24 millimeters, 35 millimeters, 50 millimeters, I find if I'm shooting at a wider aperture, 1.4, 2.0, it actually differentiates my photographs from everyone else's. Shooting longer focal length, like 135 millimeter or 300 millimeter, does the same thing. Shooting much wider, like 15 millimeters, does the same job also. But when I'm in that range, when I'm in that 24 to 70, 24 to 100 range, I want to be shooting at a wider aperture than everyone else is using. It's kind of a way to set apart what I'm doing versus what everyone else is doing. It's something when you look through pictures, when you're scrolling through Instagram, something that looks a little bit different than everything else that you see. And that's usually the biggest difference between primes and zooms, is the maximum aperture. A really, really good zoom lens will have a maximum aperture of 2.8. A really good prime lens will have a maximum aperture in these ranges of 1.4. So I have a 50 millimeter 1.4 here. I have a 35 millimeter 1.4 here. I have a 24 millimeter 1.4 that I'm shooting with right now. The ability to shoot wide open like that not only gives your photographs, a shallower depth of field and a different look, it also allows you to shoot at faster shutter speeds, which is very helpful when you're shooting in dark conditions, when you're shooting indoors. If you're shooting at Disney and you want to shoot dark rides, those wide apertures let you shoot at faster shutter speeds in the dark. Very helpful for stuff like that. So I found that using zoom lenses allows me to break out of that common pattern that a lot of other people are using and be a little bit more creative in what I'm doing. Now, the downside to using prime lenses is that you have to carry around a lot more lenses. I'll typically have 6 or 8 lenses in my bag, walking around all day, changing lenses a lot, versus having maybe 2 zooms that would cover the same focal length. So not only am I carrying around more weight, but I'm changing lenses sometimes hundreds of times a day. And that kind of shooting has kind of dictated the type of bag I use, how I walk around, how I handle my gear. Let me show you the bag that I use. I'll just give you a quick demo of how I change lenses, how quickly I can do it, and how safe it is using the kind of bag that I use. So let's take a look at that. So the most popular way to carry camera gear is in a backpack. which makes sense because you can fit a lot of stuff in there. It's comfortable to carry around all day. I have a couple of really good backpacks that I use in certain situations, but I find when I'm using a backpack, if I want to get something out of my bag, if I want to change lenses, I have to stop what I'm doing, I have to put the bag down, open it up, change my gear, close it up, put it on my back, and then get back to shooting again. That's why I always preferred using messenger bags. So a bag like this has one strap, it hangs across your body, and now my gear is going to be hanging at my side all day long rather than in a backpack where I can't always get to it. So messenger bags come in all different shapes and sizes. What I'm always looking for, though, when I'm looking for a messenger bag is a quick access opening on top. So you've seen bags like these before, shoulder bags, messenger bags, and they all have this flap that opens in the front. All your gear is right here, basically. But I find the flap gets in the way, so when I'm looking for messenger bags, I'm looking for one that has an opening on top where I can quickly access my stuff. So this one has a zipper right on top. You open it, and all my gear is right here, and I keep this unzipped all day long, and everything is just right here where I can get to it. So if I'm walking along, I want to grab my flash is right here. I can stick it right back in again. If I want to change lenses, very easy to do. All my lenses are right here at my side. I'm changing lenses hundreds of times a day, so it's great for someone like me who's shooting prime lenses and I need to change them a lot. To be able to have this stuff accessible to me at all times is great. And you know, I can change things really quickly, I can get my stuff really quickly, I can change lenses while I'm walking. If I see a shot all the way up there and I don't feel like stopping and putting things down, as I'm walking up to the subject, I can get my gear together and have it all ready for when I actually get to the spot. So that's why I like using these bags. Everything's accessible to me all day. I find that it actually, you know, lets me be a little bit more creative as far as not having to, to stop what I'm doing in order to change gear. I find with a backpack sometimes I won't change lenses just because I don't want to go through the hassle of having to stop and put things down and change things. You know, like I said, I'm changing lenses so often that to have this stuff accessible to me is really the most important thing. So it's really quick and easy to do. When I change lenses, I'm doing everything over the bag, so if I drop something, it just falls right into the bag, which is great. So that's the kind of bag I use, the messenger bag, and that's why I use it.
You know, I find that in using primes for so many years and really making myself use primes really has changed the way I approach photography. I find that, you know, when I'm using a zoom lens, I'll tend to just stay in one spot and, you know, basically zoom with the lens instead of zooming with my feet. I also tend to shoot at one end of the focal length or the other. So if I'm using a 70 to 200 millimeter lens, I'm either shooting at 70 or I'm shooting at 200, and I'm standing in the same spot and just zooming in and out. Same goes for the wide. You know, if I'm using the 24 to 70 lens, I'm either shooting at 24 or I'm shooting at 70. With the primes and with having used primes for so long now, I find myself actually composing photographs in my head before I'm even actually taking the photographs. You know, when I see a scene, when I start putting together a shot that I want to take, I'm thinking about what focal length I want to use so I know what to get out of my bag. Rather than just having the one zoom lens on and approaching the scene and zooming in and out, I'll compose it in my head beforehand, know what focal length I want to use. I'll get the shot with that, and then I'll change lenses and I'll try some other things in there. But it really changes the approach that I take to photography. You know, I know which lens I want to use. I know what each focal length looks like in each different situation. So I'm composing first based on focal length, and then everything else after that. So focal length is my first consideration when I'm getting a shot, and then I'll consider aperture, shutter speed falls in there. I'll consider, you know, whatever else I need to do in a situation, but it's always starting with focal length. Do I want to be wide? Do I want to shoot telephoto? And different lenses actually do different things for me. Some have a really wide aperture, some have other you know, special functions like a tilt shift lens, where if I want to shoot with that, I'll grab that lens. And then what I'll do also in many cases is whatever lens I happen to have on my camera, it can be really specialized lens. It could be a 15 millimeter lens. Once it's on the camera, I'll kind of start shooting from that point forward with that lens in mind. So I'll try to compose photographs with the 15mm on first, but then, if I come across a scene where I want to change, I obviously can change it. But I'm trying to create images using specific focal lengths. I mean, for fun, sometimes I'll go out, I'll spend a whole day out in the Disney parks with just one prime lens on my camera. I'll put an 85mm 1.4 lens on there and spend 16 hours just shooting with that one lens. And it's a challenge to try to compose what would typically be a wide angle scene, trying to compose it with an 85mm lens. And I find that I'm putting myself in different situations and getting different shots that I wouldn't have got if I had a zoom lens and I can just open up to 24mm and get a wide angle shot. I'm doing different things that I normally wouldn't do, stretching in different ways, and trying to get low, get under things, get around things to try to get myself into position to get shots with a lens that doesn't necessarily fit the scene that I'm trying to get, but I'm being a little bit more creative. I'm doing different things that I wouldn't have done if I had a zoom lens. So I'm not saying that you have to use all primes the way I do. Zoom lenses are great. I have two really great zoom lenses, the 24-70 and the 70-200. I use them fairly often in certain situations, but I love my primes. I use them almost all the time. But I would recommend, at least for starters, get a 50mm 1.8 lens. Have it with you at all times, especially in low light situations. But take the time, put that lens on your camera and just shoot with that. See how you can compose with just that one lens, and see if it changes the way you approach your photography the same way that it did for me. And speaking of all those lenses I have in my bag, we're going to be reviewing all of these lenses, my primes, my zooms, everything, in other videos right here on this channel. So keep an eye out for those. All the lenses I have because I like them. So I'm sure my reviews are going to be very positive. But I've had other lenses that have come and gone, similar to the ones that I have, that I could tell you why I got rid of those, why I kept the ones that I have. I think it'll be interesting because I have quite a few lenses to show you. So if nothing else, try something different. Try something out of the ordinary. Break out of the pattern of how you've been shooting before, and try different things. Try locking yourself into one focal length for the day, or only shoot at, if you have a wide aperture lens like a 1.4, only shoot at 1.4 for the entire day. Or even try different things like black and white. Spend a day where you're only shooting black and white, no matter what, no matter how colorful the scene is, you're only going to shoot black and white that day. Try different things like that, just to push yourself a little bit further, break out of your comfort zone as far as photography goes, and try different things. And you may be surprised at the things that you learn about yourself, about photography, when you try to push yourself a little bit further and try to do some things that you wouldn't normally do. So hopefully you learned a little something, if not about prime lenses, a little something about me and what makes me tick as a photographer. But if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Definitely subscribe to the channel. We're going to be doing a lot more videos like this. We're going to have a lot more of the gear reviews, of the Lightroom tutorials, just a lot of fun stuff that we have in the works that we're putting together. So definitely subscribe. And as always, if you have any questions or you have anything you want to say, put them in the comments below. We always love to hear from you. It's great interacting with everybody. It's been a lot of fun putting these videos together, and we have a lot more to come. So get yourself a prime lens, and I'll see you in the next video.